This week, John and I will discuss what I think is one of the hottest topics that we talked about all year, and that is Active Directory insecurity and some insights into that problem. Then in the news, we've got updates from Flexera, Amazon makes an acquisition, ExtraHop, and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're gonna do great.
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. You know, It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week, and I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 73 of Enterprise Security Weekly for December 20th, 2017. The last Enterprise Security Weekly for this year. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined on the lines via Skype by none other than John Strand. John, welcome to the program today.
Hi. I just got back from the CIPRI security panel for international peace in Stockholm.
It was very interesting.
I'm very, very tired.
It was an exhausting experience, huh?
No, dude, it was a 4-hour flight, a 7-hour flight, and then a 7-hour drive. We got home at 2 a.m.
Interesting.
Because I hate my children, apparently.
Well, it's good to have you back. A couple of quick announcements. Of course, itpro.tv. Gotten some great feedback lately on itpro.tv. A lot of people enjoying the benefits of having all of that training at your disposal at any time once you yourself do the subscription. ES30 is the discount code. Try it free for 7 days. Get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription, or encourage your employer, which is what I recommend, encourage your employer to buy a subscription for everyone in your organization. And that's really the way to go. That way you get access to all the great stuff at itpro.tv all the time. And I just think it's great having that at your disposal, especially in today's day and age. And speaking of webinars, on-demand webinars, we've got some on-demand, content available. securityweekly.com/on-demand. If you missed a webinar, you can go there.
On demand.
You can find 4
of them. You can see you could just find our previous webcasts right there.
Right there. You still have to register for them. Now, if you registered for one of these webcasts, go back before you register again, check your email, because you have access to all of those materials that you don't have to register again. You got an email somewhere. No. It's buried. I know we all get a lot of email. You did get an email that gives you a link to go watch that webcast because you've already registered. But if you missed it and didn't register, you can go to our on-demand program, register. There's 4 up there. Go check them out over a holiday break. There will be more to come, including one that'll be happening in January and February. It'll be a pre-recorded. John, when are we recording that? Is it this Thursday or next Thursday? Are you around this Thursday?
I thought it was next Thursday. I could do it tomorrow if we wanted to.
Either one.
Sam is all on me. She's like, we got to get this done. And I'm like, I'm tired. So
we do it next Thursday.
Let's do it tomorrow.
Or do it tomorrow. All right, screw it. We're doing it tomorrow.
Screw it. Let's do it after the show right now. Yeah. What's the topic?
We're talking about pen testing. I mean, I think we can pretty much handle that.
I think we can handle that real easy.
Did you want anyone else to join? Maybe we'll have some special guests based on availability join. It's up to you. I might
be able to get You Stay Ready, one of the top people for the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge, to talk a little bit his transition into pen testing.
I didn't know if you wanted someone else from BHIS to join in on that.
Yeah, he's one of ours.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Well,
there you go. So I thought that was a good warm-up because John and I and many of us at Security Weekly have talked about pen testing a lot, and I wanted to put together this piece that's basically the state of pen testing, how we think you can solve this problem, what problems does it solve, what are some of the best solutions, what are the best approaches to pen testing. That content will be available all year. You can register for it, securityweekly.com/on-demand. It will be there. So
nice.
I'm excited. It's exciting. That'll just be the first in a series of sick. Oh yeah, it's gonna be sick, dude. It's gonna be sick.
Gotta be better than this year.
So currently on demand in January, you'll have pen testing with John and I and others, and webcasts from Cyber Reason, Synapses, Signal Sciences, and Stealth Bits. And these webcasts, like John does webcasts, which are awesome on a particular topic, and you can just go get those, and that's great. We also do webcasts in conjunction with our sponsors, and really what it boils down to, these four that I mentioned, it's not Security Weekly or the sponsor talking the entire time. We co-present, and that can take various shapes and forms, but Security Weekly will present on our experience, and the security vendor will present on their experience, and they're all great. They're all like, we don't want this to be a sales pitch, right? Like, this isn't the sales pitch network. And even before I say it now, which is what I love, that we've groomed the industry, and at least the people we work with, to go, I don't want it to be a sales pitch. I don't even have to say that anymore. They're like, we just want to give your audience good information. I'm like, yes, that is the goal. And so we're working with people that we know and love to do that with us, and you can consume that content.
Let's be honest. We have had some vendors that, even though we've groomed them, we've trained them, they came on a couple of times and they just dropped into vendor sales pitch mode.
That does happen.
They no longer are with us.
That's right. Anymore. They're no longer with us, and we do apologize if that happens. Inevitably, it could happen again, and I apologize in advance if it does. We do our best for that not to happen, right?
Yeah, and we usually use that as an example of how not to do a webcast with us. And also bringing free beer in helps. Like, there's some vendors where, like, we don't even know what the hell they do, but they always give us beer and for you cigars, and they send me chocolate.
Yeah, it's all good.
We don't know what they do. We like them. Everyone's got their price, and ours is very low. It's
very
chocolate,
low.
Beer, and cigars. So if you accuse Security Weekly of selling out, absolutely. Beer, cigars, chocolate. That's it.
Oh, boy.
All right.
So
this is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the end of the year. There's not too many product announcements happening. It is, so the blog entries and news gets really interesting, John, like songs about how it's the most hackable time of the year. I do want to point out that it is the most hackable time of the year, in that either you're taking a break to do the SANS Holiday Hack Challenge from Ed Scotus and company, and Josh Wright and Ron Bowes and all the great people over there at Counter Hack Challenges and SANS. And you should do that. I think they have we did a whole segment on Paul Security Weekly. You go watch that. It gives you a lot of the, not answers, but details on the contest. You should do that to hone your skills.
Yes.
Also, a lot of us are going to be taking some time off during this holiday break. Attackers don't tend to take time off at the same time. That's pretty much when they work. So just kind of a cautionary tale about that. So.
Yes, absolutely. We still have to be careful. And I think that's why Network Critical said it's the most hackable time of the year, with passwords for stealing, the vulnerable feeling that IT folks fear. It's the most hackable time of the year. Somebody put a lot of time and effort.
I thought it was pretty good.
They put a lot of effort. And what sucks about this is whoever did this at Network Critical, they just posted, it says by Network Critical, there's no comments. And we need to add some comments to that. So if you get a chance, go put some comments and just say thank you, because I thought they put a lot of effort into it. Oh, wait, they might not have comments because comments may be disabled.
Oh, I see.
It's so sad. That's so sad. But it was nice. It's a really nice little thing, and you just want to sing it and drink lots of glog while singing it.
Yes. It's the most hackable time of the year.
It is.
Flexera reimagines open source vulnerability detection.
This is weird.
This is.
I know what they're doing. But,
yes, and
I know why, and I agree.
Right. So we've fallen in love with the problem, and that's what talking with Michael Santarcangelo, I realized that when I was really latched on to some solution, that could be a tactic or technique that you can just do that doesn't cost you any money but your time. It could be some open source project. that we've had mostly on Paul Security Weekly, people, from SANS especially, talking about I developed this open source tool or use this open source tool, or it can be a commercial product. And in all of those cases, before you take an action on anything, you got to fall in love with the problem. I got to know that I have that problem. We have to, John and I on this show, right? We have to recognize it as a problem. And part of that is falling in love with the problem. And I realized that we've done this with a lot of problems. This is the problem where you've got people developing code. They use some open source software or library. They include it in the code. There are solutions that exist that you can go out and just detect that in your code base, even on the fly as you're making commits. You can say, hey, you included a vulnerable open source library. You might want to fix that before you go any further. I mean, this is like a no-brainer problem to fall in love with, right? Like, this makes total sense to me.
So a couple of things about this. One, we're not saying that open source itself is the problem. I mean, it's not what Paul and I are talking about. We're huge fans of open source, and the product we're releasing Q1 next year has some open source components in it. It does. The problem is you have people that do commercial products. Like, let's just take, for example, you take like a Cisco appliance. Underneath that, it may be running Linux, it may be running Apache, it may have a whole open source stack, and then their intellectual property runs on top of that. All of that's fine. But if it's being sold as a unified appliance and a full product that's all set up, then you're not going to know about those vulnerabilities until the vendor actually patches them, and a lot of vendors don't. The problem I have with this, Paul, and this is something, you're a vulnerability management guru from way back in the days in Tenable when you worked there. The interesting thing for this for me is you mentioned that not all vulnerabilities actually get a CVE. And it looks like Flexera, they go through and they pull all of these different recorded vulnerabilities and they check to see for these recorded vulnerabilities. I think they could go one step further, and they could actually include something like Swamp in a Box that actually does that code analysis for the lesser known and lesser tested open source components. And I just wanted to throw that over to you because you've talked about it in the past.
Well, and it's an interesting problem. In fact, I was just talking with a vendor that we took a briefing with called WhiteSource. We've also covered how Black Duck was acquired by someone, I don't remember who, but they were acquired.
Now we're just reaching for names. Now we're just stretching for names.
No, I didn't make that up. I didn't make those up. Those are actual.
You made that up. Hold on, I'm Googling that right now. I call shenanigans.
Those are actual companies, WhiteSource and Black Duck. It was kind of funny that they're white and black. I never considered it that way.
Not lying. It's a real
I'm not lying. They're real.
Duck software.
And Flexera. And there are others in this space as well. And much like some folks, of course not me, have done the analysis about coverage of different vulnerabilities, which is what John was just talking about. You wonder what the coverage is like if there's no, especially John said, if there's no CVE, how do we know like how deep their own rabbit hole, not even a rabbit hole, but like how deep their coverage is when I integrate them into my environment? Am I introducing an open source library that maybe they don't have coverage for? And not every solution, as we've established in vulnerability management, comes down to how many vulnerabilities that you cover. But I think their research and development and process and methods are how extensive those are and well tested they are, so that you can avoid both false positives. I think would be kind of hard in this particular environment, I hope, which is why we like it, right? But false negatives is my concern. And I think it comes down to the research and development. Now, what's interesting is in talking with WhiteSource, they've been around since 2011 and really pride themselves on the methodology and the database that they've built of these vulnerabilities. I've also worked with web application scanning vendors that I noticed did some of this. And I was like, hey, that's really cool. Like, you looked at the JavaScript in my website and you told me that I was using a vulnerable library. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm like, that's not a false positive either. Like, holy crap, I really do have that vulnerability. That was Detectify does some of that, right? So I've always been kind of enamored with this space, basically from my time working at Tenable as well. I'm glad to see it maturing. There being actual players in the space, creating a full-blown category, as I think it's here to stay, and I think it's an awesome strategy. And those are some of the players involved.
And this is also one of those things that your advanced adversary is going to do. When we're doing assessments, if we find out there's open source components, we're going to go and find vulnerabilities in those open source components. And a lot of the open source components, like Apache and Linux, they're going to have a tremendous amount of scrutiny. But you get to some of the weird backwater open source components, they don't ever have anybody do a security audit of those components. And it almost always ends badly. And as an example of a big component, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, or they don't publicize it. And I'm sure in your research, John, like I was thinking, where do you go to figure out that this open source project, small, medium, certainly not gigantic, but maybe large, I see that the customer's running or the client is running this software. Now I got to go through like their bug reports and their Bugzilla. And if you dig through there, sometimes you can find, oh, yeah, that was a security vulnerability and we fixed it. In this one, it maybe ends up in their release notes. It certainly doesn't end up main page on security news outlets.
No,
I mean, we might cover some of it, but to be honest with you, like our coverage on that is not extensive. I mean, every once in a while we might go look into one if we came across it, but it's not getting a CVE. It's not widely publicized. CERT's not issuing a response for it or an advisory for it. And so it flies under the radar until, like you said, John, your team goes in and looks and says, oh, they're running this software. Hey, there was this bug report for this code base they haven't updated. And it allows, the developer didn't think it allowed remote code execution, but I got enough here I can go figure it out. And yep, hey, guess what? It does. Oops.
Yep, exactly.
So I think this software is very necessary, and I'm glad to see it getting some attention. All righty. Cybersecurity myths. Do you? What?
So
what,
this, I didn't actually go into this one. Did you actually listen to this whole podcast?
I did not.
Dispelling
no.
cybersecurity myths.
I thought it was interesting because most people are making predictions. This one is dispelling myths. Do you think we have a lot of myths? Did we talk about a lot of myths this year? Not really.
I don't know. I don't hear. Like, what would we consider? And we haven't listened to the podcast or the audio of it, because we can't read it on our website. So we're just going to guess. So what do you think some people would say would be a cybersecurity myth? I think passwords would have to be in this somewhere. Like a strong password is upper, lowercase, alphanumeric, special character, no dictionary word, 8 characters. That's a cybersecurity myth.
Yeah.
That is not a good password.
I think, authentication has 2 of those, not just with strength of password, but also the effectiveness of 2-factor. Like how much coverage 2-factor gives you, which I think is some good things there. But
I also think another possible cybersecurity myth, I'm just throwing this out there, Paul, it should be in there, is that your company has to be ready for 0 days. Like 0 days are what's going to get your company.
Right.
I don't think that that's true. But other than that, it gets kind of hard to start thinking, what are some myths that we see all the time in computer security? Because if you go back 6 years ago, there were tons of myths. But now I'm not seeing people perpetrating those myths very much at all.
I think the Equifax breach certainly brings up a big one that I'm sure you encounter a lot, and that is, no one's going to notice if we don't patch this vulnerability. Like, it's okay. I can patch it in 60, 90, 180 days. It's okay to just not patch things for a while. Like, I accept the risk. And this is something that I saw, John, really, when I first started doing penetration testing, companies accepting the risk as they understood it, when they really didn't understand all of the impacts. And I think that will play into, does that still play into our pen testing discussion? I like to think that we've matured as an industry beyond that, but I still, when we see stuff like Equifax, I thought it was okay to have that. Maybe they didn't know, but I don't buy that. Everything says that at least some people in the organization did know, but the myth was we didn't have to put a priority on fixing that stuff.
I possibly, but also, like I've told you, a lot of our listeners and a lot of my former students at SANS, we get a much higher refined set of organizations that come in and we do work for them, right?
Yeah.
Like they're getting into questions about what type of application whitelisting they should be implementing, or how best to implement user behavioral analytics across their entire organization. They're not sitting there and asking me questions like, what's the best AV? We aren't getting that much anymore. But whenever I talk to other testing firms, they say it's still really bad. People are still asking those base level questions. And so it's still out there. Well, and I came up with another one, cybersecurity myth. I don't know if this is in Recorded Futures podcast or not, but here's a myth that I think comes up quite a bit. Threat intelligence feeds provide value.
Yeah.
That's a myth, but somehow I doubt that would actually show up
in this. Probably not. Although Recorded Future has a really great solution, John. They were one of the vendors I was impressed with this year.
They have
and did spend some time with.
Stack.
I can't spend time with every. I wish I could. Believe me, I try to spend time with every single vendor out there, but it's just not possible. Even across the team, it'd still be impossible. We rely on you, the listener, to give us feedback a lot, oftentimes as well. But Recorded Future does have a good solution. I think the myth is that of the misuse of threat intelligence. I think it's valuable, but you have to use it in a very specific way as part of your solution and not rely on it to basically tell you what's wrong in your network, right? But I think it's a valid data point nonetheless. So Amazon is in talks. So this isn't official. They are in talks to acquire Squirrel?
I think this could be cool. I do. But
John's treading so lightly. Look, I can tell your gears were turning.
Yeah, I completely stepped right into the recorded future thing. What the hell? People don't listen to this show for political things. Look, I love Squirrel, and Paul likes Squirrel. I mean, we've had demos of Squirrel. We've seen what Squirrel does, and I want to give you my assessment of Squirrel.
They've done a great job of supporting the community by offering open source resources for threat hunting, elevating the conversation on threat hunting. And I have spoken with several people that work there, and I like them. I think they're great people. So.
I think
the crux of it is for our audience. John and I at Offensive Countermeasures somewhat have a competing, not direct competition, but we're in the same space. Yeah,
possibly. But okay. So let's talk about what Squirrel does. Squirrel allows you to take a tremendous amount of data points, correlate those data points, and see attack trends and what happens on those systems. And it takes network analysis, and it also takes endpoint analysis and SIM analysis, and it ties it all together. And it's so freaking cool. Like seriously, whenever you sit down and you see a demo of this product, if you're a tech geek, you're going to see it and you're going to get real excited because in their demo, or if you actually see someone using the product, or we've had customers that are using the product, they have these maps. You always see the maps, and you can see the threat map, you can see where the attack came in and how it pivoted, and they exfiltrated data off this way, and it's awesome. And you just want to dig in, right? But the problem is a lot of this stuff you actually have to have the ability to write. It's not quite SQL queries, but you have to be able to write queries to pull meaningful data out of Squirrel.
Oh, I see.
And whenever I was looking at one of their demos, and they have some pre-canned stuff, and it's really, really cool. But I was watching their demo, and they're like, yeah, you got to coordinate your NetFlow data in. You got to pull NetFlow into Squirrel. And then you got to pull your SIM into Squirrel. And then you can pull endpoint information into Squirrel. And you can pull all this information in, and it's all in a Hadoop database. I think they use Hadoop. I'm pretty 90% sure they use Hadoop. And it's just absolutely awesome. It's so cool. And it hit me. If you're someone that already understands how to pull all the event logs, if you're someone that already understands NetFlow, if you're someone that already understands the concept of correlation, the big question I have is, do you actually need Squirrel at that point? Or will something like soft elk, basically dumping it into an elk stack, or the Security Onion's new elk stack they're standing up, will that get you 80% of the way there? I don't know, but this gets into something Chris Brenton talks about all the time. You can't have tools for tech geeks created by tech geeks because you have this very small percentage of the market that'll actually understand how to use the tool, and that's one of my concerns. So I love Squirrel. I think it's awesome. But I worry sometimes if I think a tool is cool, then it's really kind of hitting to like Paul, myself, Larry, Carlos Perez. But does that actually permeate all the way through to people that may not know what a lot of these things actually are? So well, Paul, your take on it.
It comes down to value. And I think that, as tech geeks, we can accomplish a lot with our skills in terms of doing security analytics. But we may fall in love with the problem. In other words, I want to take in NetFlow and all these other sources. I want to correlate it, and I want to find attackers that are on my network and how they're exfiltrating data. And I can't do that because I don't have the right tool. And sure, as tech geeks, we can go put something together, but I think there's different stages. Squirrel can come along and say, well, I can save you probably 50% of the time and headache with that problem, maybe more, depending on your environment, and give you something that you can more easily work with. If there's value there, that's awesome. Right? And I think it depends on the maturity level of the organization and the security department and the security people that are there. So as long as they're showing value, vendors helping people solve problems, I have no issue with it. Where I think, and what John is talking about, where you're going to see, we talk about crossing the chasm, right? In other words, I've appealed to the tech audience, but now I want to appeal to a much wider audience. That's where you have to elevate your product and your solution such that you can put it in the hands of more people that ultimately can solve that problem in the same way without as much tuning and technical expertise.
So let's look at a company that did that, right? Splunk.
Absolutely.
Splunk,
there you go.
Splunk is very similar to the concept of Squirrel, not like the product does the same thing. But the people that learn how to use Splunk, they learn how to write things, they learn how to write different search queries in Splunk. And what's more important is they share those search queries and they build a community of all these different filters and all these different rules that they put in. They managed to cross that chasm. And they did it very, very well. I mean, you go anywhere and you have companies that are looking for Splunk engineers, right? And that's what I'm watching to see if Squirrel actually does that. If Squirrel actually does that, then that's fantastic. That's good for them. But the problem I have is if I was a CTO, right, and I was looking at this, I'm going to take off my propeller head tech geek hat for a second. And I was looking at a product like this, and I'm looking at the amount of time it takes to actually learn this. am I going to invest my time into working with Elk Stack and some of the stuff that's being written right now for Elk, whether it's Security Onion or Soft Elk? Or am I going to invest my time and my expertise training my people on how to use Squirrel? And then the other question comes on behind that. How many people in the industry right now can I go and hire off the street that know how to use Squirrel? And that's my concern for this product. I want to see this go forth and become an awesome product like Splunk. But my fear is that maybe that barrier to entry might be a bit too high. And the question I would like to ask, because I honestly don't know, what the hell did Splunk do that made so many people start using the product? I would guess it was the open source product and got people hooked on it. And then they started doing it on the enterprise. But there has to be more to it than just that component. Splunk did something amazing with their product. And I think that that's kind of the path that Squirrel needs to follow.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you wonder how they got that community. You have to build up a pretty good base to then have a community where people are sharing like add-on solutions to your product to then grow to the next level. And it's like, well, yeah, Splunk is, like you said, is great because they have that big community now. But like, how did they get there? It's a great question, John. We should bring someone from Splunk on to tell that story, on this show or, Startup, which we're going to start calling Business Security Weekly. I think that'd be very interesting because, I mean, you and I both have seen vendors, and I've worked for vendors that are trying to build community aspects. I mean, we've done that with our own product, tried to build community and open source aspects, and it's, it goes as far as you've planned for it and the stars align and like what aspects go into taking it from a small-ish community to a Splunk-sized community. So it's really cool. It's really cool. So ExtraHop adds AWS data to provide performance and security insights for hybrid enterprises. What a title that is, John.
What is this?
I have no idea.
I think that's probably my quote for the show. I think I ask this all the damn time, at least once per episode. What the hell is this?
It's optimized performance and utilization of AWS and hybrid resources, John.
Oh.
And you can accelerate root cause analysis.
You can accelerate root cause analysis? Please tell me more.
You can correlate changes made in the environment with service disruption.
With service disruption?
Yes.
Well, really, my big concern, Paul, is how do I avoid lost time in the war room? That's really what I'm looking for.
That's really...
Oh, apparently, this reduces the amount of time, the lost time
in the war room.
Yeah.
Well,
wow.
I wish we could have ended the news in 2017 on a higher note, but...
I think we're just done. But apparently, they have customer stories. They save countless hours, millions of dollars.
Hello? Hello? I think that's common sense is knocking. Yeah. Folks, we've talked about this a lot this year. Identify the problem.
You know what?
Clearly define your solution.
Paul, I've got it. I've got a class. It's not too late. It's time for you to submit a class to Black Hat, okay? This is a huge area, and I'm only half joking. Sands is going to hate me, but we need to write this class. Security for marketing professionals, because I think that there's probably far more marketing professionals in the security realm today than there are actual, event log analysts or penetration testers. We need a class that we go through and we show marketing professionals how the hell to do it right, what wrong looks like, and how to avoid wrong. If you had a 2-day class at Black Hat, it would sell like freaking hotcakes.
You know what's funny, John, is that I was actually just thinking of an element inside of that class today related to event marketing and the pitfalls and limitations.
We've got to do it.
Let's do it. Let's write this class. I have like this a list of things that why event marketing isn't effective, and I'm not saying not to do it, but it's more like this is the kind of negative effects or ways in which you won't recognize success when you do event marketing. And now there are some things in event marketing that you can do to make them really successful, but they're hard. But if you're going to put that investment in, and I was just talking with Michael about this today, how many of us have gone to a trade show in security this year? You've gone up to the vendor's booth. Either you knew about that company before, maybe you didn't know about that company, something caught your eye, and you weren't just there for the free stuff. Like, you actually wanted to talk with someone about what problem they solved and why they do it better, which is my recommendation for how you ask the question. Very important. Ask them what problem they solve. And typically about 60% of the time they're going to say, well, we do this. I'm like, nope, I didn't ask you what you did yet. I asked you what problem you solved. They're two different, very different answers. I want to get into what you do and why it's better, but you got to tell me about the problem first. How many of us have walked up, regardless of what your question was about the company, and just walked away and had no idea, or gone, that's horrible, or I don't get it. Like, typically you walk away and you're like, I still don't get it. I still don't get it. That's one of the major pitfalls in event marketing. And it obviously, on this show, transfers itself to producing press releases, because we read them and we have the same reaction. We're like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yep.
And
we need to do this. Call for training
is a great ending note for this segment, right? That's why John and I created this show, was born out of frustration of going to all these different resources and going, this. And the frustrating part is, really, because we're optimistic people, despite we're seemingly old and curmudgeon, we're optimistic. We're like, this vendor could have an awesome solution that really helps solve people's problems, but I don't understand what they do. And if I don't understand what they do, I can't even make the decision as to whether or not you can actually solve problems for people. And one reason we created the show was to start talking about having the conversation and bringing to the security community vendors that do it right, or maybe just their messaging is wrong. I mean, all of these vendors are not crap, despite, I think, a lot of people that we talk to that have a very negative view on the security vendors. That's not what John and I are saying. Not every vendor gets it right, and vendors do improve if they listen to people. Maybe they will improve. There's, I think, a lot of optimistic things, which is why we created the show, and I think we've highlighted a lot of vendors that do get it right.
And that's so hard, because we know some of the people that work at these companies that are actually the people developing the product and the support engineers. Right. And the product isn't garbage. It's just the way it's being framed makes it look like garbage. And what I think happens is, I think that you get CEOs, CIOs, CTOs of these companies, and they don't honestly know what the hell it is that they're selling. And they honestly do not know how to approach it. But they see a lot of marketing bullshit that's happening. And they go to cons like RSA and things like that. And they're like, we need to make our marketing look like that, because that's the way Cylance made their marketing look. So they're big. We've got to make our marketing look more like them. And no one knows what the hell they're doing. So like I said, Paul, this is a class, dude. You would sell it like hotcakes.
I'm all in. I'm all in. All right, with that, we're going to take a short break, even. Come back. All I want for Christmas is a secure Active Directory coming up next.
That's it.
That's it. That's all I want.